Hello, I'm Seth from USL, and today I'll be installing our IRC 28c panel into this auditorium. I'll be hooking it up with our booth port mounting bracket, and it will provide infrared signals for hearing impaired visual narration and closed captioning to the audience. I picked a spot in the booth port window that gets a direct view of the screen, and the reflection of the IR off the screen will provide closed caption hearing impaired and visual narration to the devices used by the audience. The mounting bracket is designed to go over a booth port window's frame and has an extra clearance to get it into view of the booth port. First, I'm going to take the bracket, place it up and align it so that you have a good view for the IRC panel of the screen, and mark where your screws will hold it to the wall. Next, I'm going to drill holes correctly sized for the screws I'm using to mount into our surface. Make sure when you're drilling you use adequate eye protection and cover any delicate surfaces for any dust that falls during the drilling. Now that I have the holes prepared for the bracket, I'm going to attach the bracket to the back of the IRC panel before I put it in place. If this were an in-theater bracket, I would wire the IRC panel first, but in the booth port window it's easier to wire it in place while running cables. So I take our IRC 28 panel, I turn it over on a soft surface, place the booth port mounting bracket over the top of it, and attach the provided screws. Hand tighten these with a Phillips head screwdriver. Now the IRC panel is ready to bolt to the wall. I'm going to switch out my drill bit for a Phillips head bit and use my 3 wood screws to mount the bracket in place. Now that the IRC panel is bolted firmly in place, I'm going to wire in the connections. The audio source for the install of the IRC 28 panel will be the JSD60 in our sound rack. The hearing impaired and visual narration channels are wired in via a 5-pin Phoenix connector, which we're going to connect to our 2-pair shielded cable, which we're running out the back of the sound rack and to wherever we've installed the panel. We're going to use red and black for the hearing impaired and green and white for the visual narration channels. On the JSD60, in the Phoenix connector, the first 2 will go to red and black for the hearing impaired channel. Place the red and black wires into the enclosure and close the contact with the screw. We'll then do the same for the green and white for the visual narration channel and tighten the enclosure with the screw once again. Finally, I'll be running the shield ground to the ground on the JSD60 in the middle contact on the Phoenix connector. So for the JSD60, the Phoenix connector is pins 1 and 2 for hearing impaired, pins 4 and 5 for visual narration, and the ground is the SAR channel. The connections on the back of the IRC 28 panel are made by a 10-pin Phoenix connector, with the connections outlined in the silkscreen on the back of the IRC 28. We've already run our audio and Ethernet cable. We'll connect Ethernet, and then our audio connection from the back of the JSD60 will be wired in to match the audio inputs on the IRC, with channel A used for hearing impaired and channel B used for visual narration. We'll connect channel A to pins 5 and 6. And tighten the enclosure on the Phoenix connector. And we'll wire channel B, the visual narration, to pins 8 and 9. We've grounded our shielding to the ground on the JSD60 audio processor So on this end we will float our shielding. With those two connected, I'm going to take the supplied power supply for the IRC panel, draw out the cable, and connect the DC power to pins 1 and 2 on our Phoenix connector. Confirm that all of the pins match with the silk screen on the back of the IRC, and firmly press the connector into place. One note, we've grounded the shielding on our cable in our JSD60, so the ground is floating on this end. We'll clean up our cables and then configure the IRC panel via the controls on the back. The channels can be wired to receive either 1 volt or 20 volt signals by pushing these switches up and down for channel A and channel B. We have control of the volume level on the output, and we have control of the compressor slope for both channel A and B. We recommend setting your compressor slope to 2:1, setting your channel voltage to match your output from your processor, and then use the gain control on the back of the IRC panel. When you have a source signal present, slowly turn it up until the signal presence light flickers but does not stay quite solid. Do that for both channels with the setup signal, and the IRC panel should sound good in the auditorium. Try adjusting these if you need more clarity to the dialogue. Turn up the compressor slope, and if the volume level is too low, increase the gain. Once this is done, we'll set up the IRC panel to receive closed captioning from our digital cinema server, and then we'll be providing infrared signals to the audience for hearing impaired visual narration and closed captioning.